Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, first memory of football once you started getting involved, you were at Stockport from a pretty young age, coming over from Ireland, weren't you? What are your first memories of that move?
I try to remember the feeling of when I first went on trial and just feeling like it was a very homely place, and it was a really family-orientated club. And I think it was probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to go to Stockport over other clubs. I was quite fortunate as a young kid that I had opportunities to go to a number of different clubs, and I kind of chose Stockport for, one or two probably reasons that, people would look and think that's a strange decision for a 15-year-old. But I kind of looked at it and thought, like I said, it felt like I was wanted there and that I was really appreciated there. And then secondly, I felt that I would get an opportunity if I did well. I looked at it from the point of view of Stockport weren't a massive football club, so they didn't have the resources to go out and buy numerous strikers if someone wasn't firing or if someone was injured. So I knew that if I was doing well with the youths and the reserves, that I would get my chance down the line. Because I think I had seen a lot of kind of people from around my area back in Dublin that had went to maybe bigger clubs, and 2 or 3 years later they had found their way back to Ireland, and I didn't really want that. I wanted to try and start somewhere that I could, eventually try and build up and try and get to the top if I could. And unfortunately that never came to that, but I managed to play at some decent clubs along the way and have a career, and that's kind of what I wanted when I was younger.
Did you have a lot of offers then on top of Stockport? Were there quite a few other ones that you were tempted by, or?
Well, I think Sunderland were one. There was a lot of Irish boys at Sunderland at the time, and obviously you had Niall Quinn was playing there at the time. So I think that would have probably been the most likely one to go to. With a lot of boys my age had signed for Sunderland at the time, and it probably would have been, felt probably a bit more like Ireland with so many other Irish guys there, but also could have led to a lot more distractions, having a lot more people your own age from the same sort of background. So, I think you look at the other kind of options that you had, and sometimes you do think, I wonder if I went that path, what would have happened? But, I've obviously ended up where I've ended up because of the paths and the decisions I've made. Some probably wrong decisions, but it all makes you stronger and better as an individual and as a human when you go forward. So.
And were you just spotted playing over in Ireland? Like, were scouts just regularly coming over to that level of youth game in Ireland? Or?
Yeah, well, I think the level in Ireland at the time, there was a lot of good players coming out of Ireland, and I think the leagues were very competitive, and there was scouts at games, every week, and you would be going across on trials to England and Scotland quite regularly, whenever you had breaks from school. So. There was, like I said, the club I was at, Cherry Orchard, were a fantastic youth organisation, still are to this day. They're one of the biggest clubs in Dublin in terms of like the youth structure and their setup. And so we had quite a good pool of players there that went across quite regularly. And like I said, you had numerous scouts at games and watching. And, so a credit to the club and a credit to the coaches there that they helped develop so many players that have gone on and have careers in the game.
And so going back to Stockport, do you remember your debut? Was it obviously a proud moment? Is it something that had been coming for a while? Did it come as a surprise to you because you were still young when you made your first appearance?
Yeah, I think I remember like obviously the season or the pre-season going away to, I think it was Sweden we went to, and being involved with the first team group for the first time as a youngster was fantastic. I also remember the pre-season when, doing the running and that type of stuff, and my first real experience of that. And at that time I was, a tall, skinny guy who could run. Obviously as I got older, I put a bit more meat on and slowed me down. But I remember running and some of the senior pros giving out to me for trying to be near the front, and I just wanted to obviously do as well as I could and try and make an impression. And you know, the way it kind of panned out, you know, the management, I think, had to move on a lot of kind of maybe more experienced players, and it left opportunities for younger players like myself and Rob Clare and Keith Briggs to be flung into the first team and to be given opportunities. As I said, I don't, looking back now, it was fantastic to be given that opportunity. Was I ready? Mentally, I probably felt I was, but physically, it was a different level, you know, playing against fully grown men. And, you know, as a young striker was tough. But I learned a lot from it, and I enjoyed it, and I had a great experience there and great time there. And I felt like it was a good platform for me to build on there. And as I said, the coaches at the club were excellent when I first went on trial. And Craig Madden was the youth coach, and I had a lot of time for Craig. He was an ex-striker himself, so you know, I learned a lot from him. And again, we had a really good group that, you know, that just got on really well together, and it helped settle in. As a youngster moving away from Ireland, that was tough at the time.
Were there any particular players, that the more experienced lot, that sort of took them under your wing, and helped you out as a young lad coming through? Was there anyone you particularly looked up to or role models there?
Well, I looked up a lot to Brett Angel, was the striker then, and he was obviously, you know, had been about, played at some big clubs, and you know, I was on his boots at the time as well, so I cleaned his boots, and he was fantastic with me. Always, like, sometimes when you're looking, when he's probably looking at a young striker coming in, trying to get involved in the first team, and it could well have been easy that he just dismissed me, but he was great and giving you little tips, and it taught me that as I went on in my career, I felt that it was important to give back to the younger players and to make sure that you help them coming through, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to be the future of the football club. So, you know, even as a player in my latter stage of my career, I always wanted to try and help the younger ones, and I think that comes down to guys like Brett who gave me the time of day when I was a youngster, and Mickey Flynn, the captain as well at the time, was excellent with the younger players and kept us in line and made sure that we felt part of the group as well.
So after a few years at Stockport, you sort of had a decent bit of running the side. The move to Hartlepool came. How did that come about? Because it was halfway through a season, wasn't it? And they were still in the same league as Stockport. Did that come out of the blue? Did you want to move, or?
I think I'd been at Stockport for, I think it was 7 years, 6.5, 7 years at the time, and I'd kind of been there under numerous different managers as well. I obviously signed under Gary Megson, and then we had Andy Kilner, Carlton Palmer, Sammy McElroy.
What was Carlton? I might have missed. But he was a bit of a character.
Carlton, he was a character. Yeah, he was a character. He was great. Again, he was obviously, you know, when you're a player, you probably don't see an awful lot that goes on. But, you know, as you get older and you actually look back at stuff, you realise how difficult the job he must have had. You know, because a lot of the kind of senior players that were in the squad were moved on, probably for financial reasons. Yeah. And I know now myself how the importance of having, you know, one or two key senior players to help on the pitch with younger players that have been through that experience before and understand how to see out a game when it's 1-0, or, you know, understand that momentum is maybe shifting in a game and help the younger ones, you know, and rein them in a little bit. And I think that's important for the development and learning of younger players. And I think as a group, we were young and full of energy, but we hadn't got them players around us. And as I said, that was kind of under Carlton's watch, that he had to move them on and bring in a much younger group, which was great for the team dynamics in terms of, you know, everybody off the park got on. We're all mates, and we had a good team spirit. But I do think that the importance of having them senior ones around helps, and I felt he didn't have that, and probably, you know, one of his first managerial jobs as a player manager as well, it was always going to be tough in that situation for him. But I enjoyed working under Carlton. He was great for the group, and he tried to develop a good team spirit, which I think he managed. It just obviously we lacked that little bit of nous and know-how to get results to help keep him in a job.
But so obviously, did you feel Stockport were slowly declining, and the chance to move to Hartlepool just be a fresh start for you? Or
I don't think it was the fact that I felt they were declining. I felt that for my own freshness and for my own kind of probably development in my own career, that I needed to maybe move. I thought I'd kind of I'd stagnated a bit there, and I'd kind of probably got a bit too comfortable there, and I felt that it was time to move on. And when Sammy came in, I'd had a conversation with Sammy about that, and he agreed, and he kind of agreed for me to move on. And then I think he got sacked, if I remember correctly, and then Chris Turner came in. And he said he wanted to try and keep me about for a while, but I'd already kind of had my heart set on leaving, and thankfully Chris was happy enough for that to happen, and Stockport, or sorry, Hartlepool, should I say, that option came about to move in January, and obviously went, and I spent a couple of years there before I obviously went up to Scotland.
And then how did that move come about? Obviously, you've moved a bit further north with Hartlepool. Do you reckon because you're a little bit closer to the border, that like Leor of Scotland was always there? Was there a bit of a connection there?
I hadn't really ever considered moving to Scotland. It was more, I had done okay at Hartlepool. It took me a while to settle. I think my first goal was in the May against Bournemouth, in the last game of the season before the playoffs, and so it did take me time to settle there. And then again, change of manager. Danny Wilson came in and wanted to bring in his own people. I kind of seen the writing on the wall when I came back for pre-season, and my number had gone from 16 to 25. So that was a clear indication that I was moving out of the manager's thoughts. But these things happen in football, and we all have opinions on players and the game, and I obviously wasn't for Danny. So he kind of spoke to me in the pre-season about moving on. But I hadn't got a year left in my contract, and we were kind of trying to come to an agreement and an arrangement to finish the contract early. We couldn't agree on terms, so I kind of sat about and waited, and then an opportunity came up where, as they do in football, where a couple of strikers got injured, maybe a suspension or two, and then there's nobody else to play up front, so you get chucked in. And I scored some goals and done well, and off the back of that, then I had a phone call from an agent to say that a team in Scotland were interested, Dundee United, in taking me. I didn't know an awful lot about Dundee United at the time. I think outside kind of Celtic and Rangers, there wasn't much coverage of the Scottish leagues down in England at that time. So I spoke to Gavin Strachan, who was at Hartlepool and had been in Scotland with Dundee, and he told me that it was a fantastic football club, and it was a great opportunity to go and play at a really good level. And so I went and met with them, and obviously that went through in the January. So I'm delighted that it did. I obviously felt they were my best years in a playing sense up in Scotland, and I really enjoyed the standard and the style of football up there, and the opportunities that come with playing in Scotland. A lot of people probably in England in the lower leagues look at Scotland and think it's not a great standard, it's not a great league, but it's a fantastic league. It really is, and it's a fantastic standard. And the opportunities, as I said, if you're at maybe one of the top 6 clubs, you've got a really, really good chance of winning a trophy, a major trophy. When you're in the lower leagues in England, the chances of winning the FA Cup, the League Cup are slim and far between. So the opportunities to maybe win a trophy, to qualify for European football, obviously it's the qualifying stages, but the opportunities to go and do that, and obviously experienced all that when I went there, which was great.
And how did you find the adjustment from having predominantly played in League One and League Two in England, going to the SPL? Was it harder? Was, like you said, that the style of play a bit different, that you had to adapt to it, or?
I think the style was a bit different. I actually think it doesn't get an awful lot of credit that it deserves. I think there was more football played. I think, as a 6-foot+ striker in League One, League Two, I was just used for flicking the ball on and stuff like that. And then when I went to Scotland, it was more, yes, you still do that side of the game in certain situations, but probably a bit more ball into your feet and link up play a bit more. I think I went from being a small target striker to a big target striker, because obviously physically I didn't think the players or the centre backs were as big or as physical in Scotland. So I then, from going up against guys that are maybe 6'4", 6'5", built, really, really strongly, you're going then to go and playing against centre backs that are maybe 5'10", 5'11", and maybe a little bit quicker, but physically you can hold them off a lot more comfortably. So I felt that side of it changed a lot for me, and as I said, I went from probably being a small target striker to a big target striker, and it was a nice change, giving out bruises rather than getting more bruises on a Saturday was a nice change.
And what was it like in, obviously, a city with a massive rivalry, having another club just across the road from you? That must have been quite heated in the derbies you experienced there. What was it like in that sort of atmosphere?
It was funny because when I first went, obviously, when you go to the stadium, the stadiums are literally just like up and across the street. It's like, you walk 100 yards up the street and you're at Dens, and you walk down the street and you're at Tannadice. So it is a strange one like that. But for the first number of years, Dundee were in the lower division, so we never really had any games. We never really got drawn in the cup. We ended up having, I think, the first derby we had a commemorative game where we played them in a friendly, which was a sellout for a friendly game, which is unheard of. And I think I'd just been come back from injuries. I managed to score a goal in that game, which was great. We had a couple of other friendlies during maybe pre-season, and then when Dundee got promoted, obviously the rivalry was there, and it was fantastic. I think it's a more friendly rivalry, and I don't think it's as probably as heated as other derbies, throughout the season. But obviously, as that week intensifies and builds up, it does. The fans let you know that it's a derby game and you have to win. And as we spoke about there, if you don't win, the other team are literally 100 yards up the road most days, so they'll let you know if they win as well.
Yeah. And at Dundee United, obviously, you like you mentioned, you got a chance to win a cup, winning the Scottish Cup in 2010. What are your memories of that? You started in the final. Was it one of the highlights of your career, you'd say?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think when you start out as a young player, you want to, like I said earlier, you want to play at the highest level you possibly can. Everybody has aspirations of playing for Manchester United's, Liverpool's, and unfortunately we don't all get there. But the next best thing is to try and win trophies and to try and win medals, and to do that at a club like Dundee United. They'd been to numerous finals throughout the year. I think they hadn't got many trophies. I think the team in the kind of 80s had won a league and they'd won some trophies, and so it had been a number of years before that they had actually won. So it was great to be part of that, and the celebrations after it were incredible. The open top bus parade, and then obviously a couple of days on the lash with the lads as well, which was great. And yeah, it was just a fantastic experience, and especially the final itself. The way it kind of panned out, when we went 2-0 up, 3-0 up with 10 minutes to go, you just kind of, you knew that the other team were dead on their feet, and that it was more or less done and dusted. So you could enjoy them last 10 minutes of the game and enjoy the atmosphere of the United fans all celebrating. It was a great final for us, and a nice one to win.
And who were the key players who were you close with, and who stood out from that team during the years that you were at Dundee United?
There was a lot of good players. I think Craig Conway scored 2 in that final. He obviously then went down to Cardiff. He played at Cardiff, Blackburn, and he's back up now at St Johnstone. David Goodwillie was a younger striker coming through at that time. He was fantastic in that season. Scored a lot of goals. Was a really, really good partner to play with. Defensively, we had Andy Webster, who we had on loan from Rangers. Lee Wilkie had got injured, but I think he was someone who, if if he hadn't have had the injuries that he had, then I think he would have went on and played at a much higher level. He had a really bad knee, but he was a fantastic centre back. I think you could go through the whole team, all really good players that went on to either kept playing at United or went on to bigger clubs. And I think you got to give credit to the management of Craig Levein originally with the signings, very astute signings of players that maybe a lot of players or people and fans didn't really know about, and he managed to create a squad with himself and Peter Houston, create a squad that were capable of competing with the top teams in that league. And I think most seasons we were in the top three, fighting for European spots, which was great. I think my biggest regret at Dundee United is that we never actually progressed to the group stages of the Europa League. We came close after the year after we won the cup, when AEK Athens knocked us out in the playoff round 2-1. But that's probably the closest we came, and it would have been great for the fans, I think, if we had managed to go that one step further and give them a consistent European nights, because there was them nights that we had in Europe were incredible as well, and electric atmospheres at Tannadice that I really enjoyed.
I was going to say, going to the European fixtures, which particular games stood out? Because it's fair to say, apart from Celtic and Rangers in the last few years, no one's had a sustained run in Europe. So those qualifiers, was there pressure on you to get there? Obviously, it'd be huge in a financial sense for the club, but just for your own career as well, like coming up against AEK Athens and stuff like that. What stands out from those games for you?
Yeah, well, I think obviously when the AEK Athens one was probably the one. We lost 1-0 at home in the first leg, and then we went out there and we went 1-0 down, and then it was a weird game because it obviously wouldn't be weird in this day and age because there was no fans allowed at the game because we were playing at Olympiacos Stadium because there was something up with AEK Athens Stadium, so we played at Olympiacos Stadium and they didn't let any fans in because I think the fans had went and wrecked another stadium that we were due to play at, so they kept their fans away from the stadium because of the rivalry. So we had maybe a small number of United fans up in the top of the stand. So it was an eerie atmosphere. And then I managed to come off the bench and score to make it 2-1. And then we missed a really good opportunity in the last minute that would have put us through an away goal. So that was probably the closest we came, as I said. The other ones were, Dynamo Moscow. We played Dynamo Moscow home first. We drew 2-2 with them. They had some really, really, I think Karani was playing in front, and they had a couple of other guys. I'm not sure the pronunciations of their name, but I'm sure they signed the winger for about 20 million.
Yeah.
So they had a really big budget, and then when we went back out there to Moscow, we got battered 5-0. We probably felt we had a chance after the first leg, but they destroyed us in the second. Slash Wroclaw was the other one. Away goals, I think we got beat on that one. So that was.
What was the management? Were they just basically saying, "Go and enjoy it. This is a bonus to our last campaign," sort of thing? We're not too expectant on you. What was their sort of thoughts ahead of those sort of games?
Well, obviously they would go into them games like they go into any game, and you'd plan to try and win, and you'd go out and you'd set up to try and win, and obviously when you've maybe not been knocked out, they would probably tell you, the levels that you're playing against. But going into the game, they obviously always made the players feel like they could go and win the game, and made you feel like you were 10 feet tall going into the games, that you were good enough to be playing these games. And as I said, you've got to give them credit for that, because the levels of the budgets that I'd imagine they were competing against were astronomical, and so yeah, we would always feel like we could win the game, and we wanted to win the games. But and I think the press obviously in Scotland probably expected you to win the games, because a lot of the teams that you're playing against, they don't probably understand the levels that they're at, and they just expect you to go and win the game. So no, I think the staff, obviously, like I said, they would want you to go and try and win, and they prepare you as much as they could, and they do the background, and they done the homework on all the opposition we played, and but no, they were really good experiences, as I said, and it's just a shame we never got to having a a kind of extended period in them environments and in them games.
So at Dundee, it's probably say you're in your peak of your career there through like consistency. Was there ever any offers to come back down to England? Was it on your mind that perhaps you could play championship level in England? What were your thoughts? Or were you just happy staying at Dundee United?
I think when I was there, I had quite a number of injuries that weren't, that kind of halted me a little bit at times. And I was actually had a spell where I was actually told I could leave if I found something. But having experienced that at Hartlepool, I knew opportunities would come about, and it was probably really before I kind of hit my peak at Dundee United that happened, and I kind of just bided my time and waited for the opportunity. And then thankfully when that opportunity came, I managed to take it, and and then that obviously led to going on and scoring a lot of goals there and winning the Scottish Cup. And in terms of going back to England, I think when I got to Scotland, I really enjoyed Scotland and I liked playing in Scotland, and I wanted to try and maybe play in Scotland for as long as I could. I think if anything, if I was going to go anywhere else, I wanted to try and maybe try abroad at the end of that. I wanted to experience playing abroad and just sample a different style and different probably culture. So that would have been nice to do as a player, but obviously never materialised and never really came up.
Is that something you did actively look for? Were there ever any offers from abroad or any agents getting in touch?
I think when I was leaving Dundee United, and obviously Rangers were interested and came in, then that was my main focus, was to go there for 2 seasons. And then by the time I'd finished at Rangers, I was coming to, I think it was 32, I think I was when I left Rangers. So I was a little bit older. I had an opportunity, went out to South Africa to train for a week with a club. That never really happened. I had a couple of whispers from a couple of teams in America that never really, materialised. A couple of agents saying they could maybe get you here and get you there. It never really happened. So I then went to Raith Rovers just to try and keep match fit up until the January, waiting for the January window to open back up again abroad. And during that spell at Raith, then I got the opportunity to go in at Hearts as a coach. So I kind of looked at it and thought it was a fantastic time to maybe make that transition into coaching, and then obviously just hang up the boots and just move on from that.
So the move to Rangers, obviously a bit different given their situation at the time, but you must have been over the moon that a club of that stature came in for you, and it's not many players get the chance to play for such a club like that. What were your memories at the time of them making the move for you? Was it talked about for a while?
I wouldn't say it was talked about for a while. I think I got a phone call from my previous manager that had been at Dundee United, and he said that he'd had an inquiry about kind of my personality and my what I could bring to the table. Obviously, they were aware of me because they've played against me enough times, but he just wanted to do a background check, and then you said, "Oh, would you go to Rangers?" Obviously, them being in the lower league and stuff like that. So I thought it was a fantastic opportunity. As I spoke about earlier, when you're a youngster, you want to play at the highest levels you possibly can. Obviously, I was dropping down levels to go and play for Rangers, but they're still a massive football club. 50-odd thousand at every home game, which is remarkable, especially at that level. Selling out every week at League One level in Scotland, 50-odd thousand, and then even the away games basically were sold out with Rangers fans. So yeah, it was a great chance to go and play for a massive football club. I went and met Ali, obviously, when he got in touch with Dundee United about speaking to me. So I went and met him with my wife, and we spoke to him, and I got a great vibe off Ali. And I had a lot of time for Ali from a lot of meetings we'd had when we played against Rangers. The way he conducted himself, the times that we beat them, I always felt he came across really gracious and really, really good in his defeats against us, and I had a lot of time for that, the way he was as a person, and it was a great opportunity to go and play for someone like that as well. So delighted I went and done it, and delighted I had the opportunity to go and play at a massive club like that, and fond memories there.
Did you have reservations about, obviously you'd had a good few seasons in the SPL, did you have reservations? Yeah, it's Rangers, but I'm dropping down 2 levels. Was that on the back of your mind, or was it just it's Rangers at the end of the day?
I think the size of the football club, kind of outweigh the negativity of dropping down the divisions. And obviously, I haven't spoke to Ali about what he was trying to do and his project. And I was obviously going in as an older type of pro, as I spoke about earlier, to help with some of the younger ones. I think the original kind of project for him was to have some older heads that have that experience to help the younger ones out, and then by the time they were hoping to get back through the levels as quick as they could, and then by the time they got back to that top level, they would have younger players ready to go and play and compete at that level. And obviously that didn't work out the way he had planned. But I liked the project. I liked, there was a lot of positives with the move. Obviously, as you said, the negatives were what they were, and it was a lot of people probably that were outside of my bubble kind of assumed that I would go elsewhere. But if I'm being brutally honest, there wasn't an awful lot of other opportunities on the cards. There was a few whispers of potentially going back to England. But at that stage of my career, I think with the injuries I'd had, I wasn't really wanting to go back and play lower leagues in England and play Saturday, Tuesday for majority of the season, and the amount of games you have. I think playing in Scotland suited me at this stage of my career. Playing Saturday or Saturday, Sunday, having that week break in between allowed me to recover after games, and allowed my injuries to probably extended my career playing in Scotland. Had I played more games at that stage, I probably would have had to hang up the boots a bit sooner.